Good afternoon. Bob Spitz here with Kareem Abizaid of Knockout Collision. We're going to continue our series on increasing your processes, your efficiency through proper processes and procedures so that you can realize a better bottom line, satisfy your customers, and keep the insurance companies happy. In our last talk, we got up to the point of a full disassembly, and actually we got a little ahead of ourselves, didn't we, Kareem? Because we didn't even talk about starting the day with a good written plan. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about starting the day and the importance of that in a collision shop of a good written plan. How important is it?
Okay, Bob. Yeah, I definitely agree that is vital. We have so many things going on in a collision shop, from not just from day to day, but from hour to hour. Things change. We receive parts that are incorrect, or we find some hidden damage. And so it's so vital to write a plan every day before we start. And we basically take an inventory of every job that we have in the shop, and where it's at in the process, and what the next step or a couple of steps that need to be done on that particular vehicle are. So as a production manager or the estimator who is handling the jobs, they're reminded constantly of where things are in the process and what needs to be done next.
Right, because the number one enemy, I would think, to your business as any collision business, collision more so than general repair, is downtime and dead time, a technician with nothing to do.
Absolutely. With the size, the size of our jobs, number of hours on them, definitely becomes a big deal. If you had planned for a technician to be able to work on a vehicle, for a day or better, and now all of a sudden there's some reason they can't because a part didn't show up or something went wrong, you can definitely lose a big chunk of production real fast, and that's frustrating for everybody, the customer, the shop, and the technician.
Sure, and so knowing at what point a job can safely be completed, or a particular process or procedure on a car, although the car's not done, but this procedure is done and allows the technician to move over quickly and smoothly to another vehicle to start a process while this one is curing, or whatever wait time we have with that vehicle. You've got that all down on, to the best of your ability, a written plan in the beginning of the day. It's not just random actions during the day in the shop, like what should I work on now? In any shop, no technician should ever, coming up to management or the owner, go, what do you want me to do now? That should never happen. And if you've got a good written plan, if you understand every vehicle that is there, and what is the next thing that needs to be done, what is the step after that needs to be done compared to all the other vehicles, and you've written it out, well, you can prioritize it. You can't do that in your head, can you?
No, absolutely not. The next emergency becomes the most important one if you don't have a plan to control the flow of production. The flow of production ends up controlling you.
Right. And understanding, and I'm glad you brought that up, understanding the flow line and how it goes in a collision shop from department to department, through the administrative, the sales process, and then to disassembly, and then to repair and refinishing and reassembly and detail. It's very much like an assembly line, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, there is a shop not far from you, Bob, that I've checked out that is built that way, and I think they're kind of forcing the issue. It's like one way in and one way out, and you can't go backwards. So they've really got in their building, in their shop, the structure in place to kind of force that kind of production line process.
That's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is based on, and I don't want to confuse people, but there's two theories that are going on big time right now in collision, and they've been going on for years. And one is something called Six Sigma, which is a theory of reducing waste and improving quality, tremendous improvement of quality throughout the process. And the other one is theory of constraints. And both of those, the bottom line is management has always got to look for what's slowing or stopping production in its shop and really analyze that. And if you track statistics, you can do that so that you can find what the problem is and rectify it. And the three big ones is employee training, your supply lines for your parts and materials, and then, of course, your internal policies to make sure that the policies that your shop needs to run on to achieve its goals is well known by everybody in the shop. And I just did a wonderful podcast yesterday with P.J. Roberts and Steve Eck on this point, because it's a funny kind of thing, Kareem, and I know you've been in business long enough. You've witnessed this, where you can hire an experienced estimator or an experienced technician. They come into your shop. They've been in the industry 10 years. They come into your shop with policy in their head from the last shop they worked in, and it might not be in alignment with the policies in your shop. It's kind of a funny kind of thing, but that happens in business all the time. You've got employees who are thinking with policy outside of your business that don't apply to you, and those can be extremely detrimental to your cycle time.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have a new technician that we've been training, and he's new to our shop, but he's been in the field in the business for quite a few years, and the last shop he was in was a good shop. They did quality work, but they weren't nearly as organized, and they certainly didn't put everything in writing and take the time to prepare daily lists and to go over the jobs to the extent that we do. And it's been a bit of a transition, and it takes some time sometimes for them to realize that investment really pays off for them too, and taking
Right.
that time to really properly blueprint a job and get it to from start to finish in a smooth path, as opposed to starting and stopping it a dozen times.
Absolutely. So, we start with a good written plan. We have a very good process on our dismantle and documentation there that we talked about on the last call. But what about actually mapping out the vehicle itself?
Yeah, that's a lot of successful shops have come up with some real good methods of documenting on the car with colored paint pens, markers, exactly what they want done, and when. Sometimes they'll make notes, special notes on the windshield or the rear glass to make the shop more efficient and keep things at the top of people's mind. Like if a car is going to need an alignment or some sublet service, they'll write that in red pen on the windshield. The actual damage that's being repaired can be marked on the car, and the things that aren't being repaired with different colors to identify what they want done, or what the estimator has agreed upon with the customer and the insurance agent. A popular method is using red, yellow, and green. Green, anything marked with green or circled in green is definitely approved to be repaired. Anything in yellow is questioned, like we're waiting for. And red is we're not going to fix it. It's either not part of the damage or not approved by the customer.
Right,
So
and even though it is a damaged panel, it is not part of this repair.
Right, and those things need to be documented too, like we talked about in the last call, so you don't get a surprise from the customer because they never saw it before.
Mm-hmm. And of course, nobody wants to walk out into the shop and find a technician working on a panel that there's no approval to repair.
No, that's expensive. As soon as you start banging on a panel with a hammer or grinding it, you own it, and you're going to have to complete it.
That's right. You're committed.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no going back
You
there.
can't put the broken part back on like you could as a mechanic.
That's right. Now, what about, let me ask you this question. Before the job is actually started, when you've removed parts, or especially in the disassembly process, items that are going to be reused that may need to be refurbished or cleaned up or whatever. How does that fit in? That's almost like a pre-production repair, getting components ready and staged for reassembly.
Yeah, it's a great idea, so you know what you need and don't need. And I know of, I've got a friend who we both know in Arkansas who, when they disassemble a car, any clips that are broken, they document, they write them down so they can bill them out, and then they'll get from their inventory when possible, and they actually put them in the bag or in the box which locates the bumper clips or the door clips. So they'll replace them at the time of disassembly with new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So when the technician goes to put it back together, they're already there and ready with the new parts.
That's right. It's like a kit. It's almost like a bumper kit, a bumper installation kit, right? Everything's in the box, and this might sound so elementary, but making sure that all those components that are going to be reused for that vehicle are correctly organized and put in an agreed upon place every time, whether it's in the trunk of the car or the front seat of the car or on a shelf marked. How do you organize that?
We use parts carts, and they're very, very valuable because we've run into many snags with having parts stored on shelves or in the car, and there's just when there's so many options,
mm-hmm.
It adds confusion in. What you're saying about these things, they seem elementary. Well, if you have all the simple elementary items and processes nailed down, then you've got your attention to handle any big catastrophes that might come up, and the likeliness that they do is much less. So we use parts carts. When we take a car apart, we put the damaged parts on the cart. The vehicle's RO number is on that cart too. Makes it real easy and efficient for the technician, the estimator, or the insurance adjuster to come out and see what parts are damaged, what parts are good. When we receive new parts for that job, we can check those new parts in and then put them on that cart so the technician knows what parts are for what, and we'll see what they have. The nice thing about these parts carts, too, is you can roll them from one stall to another. So if you got a vehicle that's taken apart, put all the parts on it, if you pull that vehicle out of your stall to pull another one in, you can also move the parts cart out of the way. So the next vehicle that comes in, you can also have the parts cart close by to accompany it.
Right. Because, once again, in all of these different philosophies of efficiency, it comes down to identifying what's either wasting time or wasting material and figuring out what is the correct way to do it, and then having a policy that everybody understands so it's done that way every time. Because, people talk about blueprinting the job. You got to blueprint the shop on your procedures.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And we know that parts and material can be one of the biggest time wasters in a shop. Wrong parts or inadequate parts or just missing parts or someone put it somewhere else or whatever. Terrible time wasters.
Yes, definitely.
So getting on to the idea of parts, we talked about what we're doing with the parts that we're going to reuse. We've removed and inspected it, and either we've sent it out to get rebuilt or straightened out or whatever. When we're ordering parts, because parts can be an absolute killer to efficiency, What are some of the better processes in a collision shop in handling the parts situation from the time the customer has signed the repair order?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is absolutely don't use the telephone and call people and tell them what parts you need, because they've got a bunch of other people calling or talking to them, and that's a big cause of mistakes. Putting things in writing is our policy number one at the shop, and it totally applies to ordering parts. We won't order parts without a purchase order. And
the purchase order is tied to that vehicle.
Right. So that's going to eliminate buying parts that don't get billed out on the job. It also puts it in writing exactly what we're asking for with a part number, and we fax or email those. Even have a couple of companies now where we can order directly. They've provided a website that allows us to download our parts ordering information into their website. So it reduces the amount of error. It goes through less people. So it reduces the chance of having, a data input entry error.
That's right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, it usually gets us the parts quicker too, and it just clarifies things. So when there is a problem, it can get fixed easily because you've identified, hey, is it my estimator that keeps ordering parts wrong, or maybe is it the parts guy at the parts house that isn't recording things properly? When things are in writing and they're time stamped, it helps to eliminate mistakes, and it teaches people and shows them actually where the real problems are so they can handle them. When we fax or email something, there's a record of it, and then it gets stamped, and anybody can go back and take a look at that, and then you know what has happened.
Right. So definitely having a process there, a standard process on how replacement parts are going to be handled in your shop, and then having policy so that everybody in your shop knows, is just critical to improving your cycle time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Kareem, as an MS inspector, a shop inspector, are these some of the things you're looking for when you go in and inspect a shop?
Absolutely. How they are doing their parts ordering, how they receive parts when the parts come in, how they handle returns when returns come up. Those are all critical things. Those little things add time for everybody in the shop, and interruptions and that added time really kills everybody's efficiency.
Which, of course, kills the bottom line.
Yeah.
And now we have shop owners who are just making a living barely.
Yeah, and it's hard work, and there's a lot. We deal with people's problems all day long, and it's got to be worth it. It's got to be financially worth it. So we've got to get really efficient and good about the way we handle things in the shop, so we minimize the amount of upsets during the day.
Right. Now, when you're moving a vehicle from one department to the other, are you doing a QC check before it leaves that department to go into another department?
Absolutely. The technician responsible for the repairs checks all the work that he's done, actually initials that he's completed those items, and then the next technician who's going to be working on it goes through a list.
Right, so if you're doing QC check all the way through, at the end you shouldn't find any major, oh my gosh.
Right, because by the time the car gets to detail or gets near the final QC check, if you find major things missing, a lot of people, many people have touched the car and not addressed them. So it's pretty late in the game to call a customer and tell them it's going to be a few more days because you missed something major. That's definitely not good for CSI.
No. no, and insurance companies actually keep close track on that point, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to kill your cycle time, too. I mean, if a repair should only take a couple of days, a few days, or a week for that matter, if you find out late in the game at the time where it's getting reassembled or detailed that you missed something, and some customers they definitely don't want their car until it's completely finished, especially if the insurance company is paying for a rental car.
Right.
They don't want the hassle of coming to pick a car up and then having to come back again later to get it finished or get a part added or.
No, because customers assume that it's fixed right the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think
anything less than that is a failure.
anything less than that is a failure. And I think at this point here on the talk today, I think this is a good place to end off. And in summary, you want to, one, make sure you're starting the day with a comprehensive written plan of everything that's in the shop and all the next things that have got to be done. Two, you've got to map out the job, make sure nobody is working on things they shouldn't be working on, and make sure there's paperwork going with that job all the way through the process. Three, let's make sure we think through, and if you need help with this, MS can absolutely help you learn how to come up with the policies and the procedures for handling your parts so that you have a system in place. And then finally, make sure that vehicle's QC'd all the way through so that we don't have surprises at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, that's great. Because the next talk, what I want to talk to you about is that final QC and the delivery and the importance of having a procedure for delivering the car to the customer from a PR point, a customer satisfaction point, and referral business.
Okay, great.
All that is so crucial to having a busy shop. So I want to thank you so much for your time today, Kareem.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
All right. And I'll talk to you again soon, okay?
All right.
Later, man.
Bye.